Hi, and my name's Kevin Mack, and welcome again to Well Documented Nerd. Again, this is generally anything and everything about nerd culture, so I hope you enjoy this series. This is another video in the series where I'm explaining D&D Beyond to different players and how and where to find things and what all this stuff means. So if you're a new player or if you're new to D&D Beyond, I hope you find this helpful. Today's topic is features and traits. So, what do I mean whenever I talk about features and traits? Every race and every class and every subclass has certain features and traits that it offers to a player. So, as you choose those things while creating a character, you'll find that you all of a sudden have these abilities, and you want to make sure you keep track of them because honestly, they're what define a lot of how your character plays and how they behave. So, with that, let's jump right in and see how this works. So again, for those of you who are newer to this video series, I'm using a character of mine that I built for my wife's campaign. He's a level 1 tiefling artificer named Vulcan Smedan. So what you're seeing here is my D&D Beyond page for managing this character. So what we specifically in this case want to look at is features and traits. So if I'm looking at the default screen here, we talked about before, here are my ability scores, here's my proficiency bonus, here's saving throws and skills. But the big area I want to look at right now is down in this block. So this block has multiple tabs across the top, and the tab we care the most about is features and traits. So what are features and traits? Features and traits are essentially they boil down to things you get by virtue of your race or your class in D&D. And these are things that can help you with how you utilize your character and how you leverage them in game. So my character, as I mentioned before, is a tiefling artificer. So what you'll notice here, number one, as I'm looking at this, right now it's defaulted to showing me all the features and traits associated with my character. Okay? But I can ask it to show me just class features or just racial features. So what I can see here is it'll tell me a lot of different things about my character. Now let's start with the racial features, because most times you pick your race before you pick your class. So my character is a tiefling. So by default, I gain things like dark vision. I have the ability to see in total darkness, shades of gray, but it's up to 60 feet. And I can see that listed here as something my character has. So if I get dropped into darkness, I can act, and the DM says something to the effect of, it's completely black, none of you can see anything. I have dark vision, so I don't need a torch. I have the ability to see up to 60 feet, no problem. You also notice this PHB. Now, they have a nice hovering tool in D&D Beyond that tells you this is the player's handbook and where to find it. So if I go to page 43 of the player's handbook, it talks about how tieflings have dark vision. It also says here that I have hellish resistance, meaning because by virtue of being a tiefling, due to that devil or demon upbringing, I have the ability I have a resistance to fire damage. So what does that mean? We'll cover conditions more later, but what this essentially means is that any damage that's fire that I take is cut in half automatically. So if somebody hits me with a firebolt for 12, I take 6, just by virtue of being a tiefling, which is pretty cool. And then Infernal Legacy. The Thamagurgi cantrip. At third level, I can cast Hellish Rebuke, second, once per long rest. Fifth, you can cast Darkness once per long rest. Charisma is my spellcasting ability. Notice this only shows the Thamagurgi cantrip. That's because if we look up here, I am still a level 1. As this grows and changes, I will get more racial features will appear here as I reach those appropriate levels. So important to know that this is nice because it filters down the list to only what I actually have, rather than going and looking at the book and seeing all the things I could get. Like, this tells me things that are coming, but it doesn't give me them by default. Also, if you look at, in this case, it says I have this spell, this cantrip. If I do look at spells under here, you'll see that I have that at will, and it says I have it by virtue of my Infernal Legacy. Okay? So the next part, we talked about racial features. Let's talk about class features. So by virtue of being an artificer, I gain certain abilities. And most of my stuff is defined by virtue of being an artificer, such as my hit points, my proficiencies, and other things. Now notice here, ERFTLW, it's Eberron Rise from the Last War. This is the book, page 54, where you'll find all of the artificer class. And it calls out here, hey, you have a proficiency with Smith's Tools, Arcana, and Investigation. That's pretty awesome, right? Now notice I do also have it showing here under my proficiencies and languages, tools, forgery kit, playing cards, Smith Tools, and it says how I got this. I got this by being virtue of an artificer. Thieves Tools, Artificer, Tinker Tools, Artificer. Now what else does this tell me? This tells me that I have imbue magical tinkering or magical tinkering. I can imbue a tiny magical object with a magic property of my choice. 5-foot radius light up to 66 seconds long for a recorded message, emits an odor or nonverbal sound, static visual image, including up to 25 words of text, and I can affect at 4 different items at a time that work like this. Now the cool part with D&D Beyond is I can track this as I do it. So if I'm playing along here and all of a sudden I say, oh, we're in darkness, I'm going to pick up a can off the ground and use magic tinkering to make it light up so that they at least have 5 feet of visibility. I check this and I'm good. Like, I can move on. But it at least helps me remember that I checked that. And then after a long rest or after I disable that item, I can get it back. Okay? So it helps to track these kind of things. Now here's the important part. It talks about spell casting. So being that I'm an artificer, it tells me here that I can prepare and cast spells as an artificer. And I can prepare prepared artificer as rituals if they have the ritual tag. I need a spell casting focus, specifically Thieves Tools or some kind of artisan tools, in hand when I cast any spell. So I have to have my tools. This is important because it actually says here, number 1, I can cast rituals. Number 2, I can cast spells using my int modifier as my spellcaster. And specifically here, though, I have to have some form of tools in my hand to cast. I can't, as an artificer, one of the things that's unique is you use your tools and engineering to cast spells. So I can't just cast spells if I've lost everything. So if I'm taking capture and I'm stripped of everything I have, I don't have the ability to cast any spells other than Thamagurgy because that cantrip I get by virtue of being a tiefling. Otherwise, I have nothing. So it's important to know that because there are things like that built in to help with balance of the game. So like sorcerers get their spells by default. They don't need that kind of thing. Whereas a wizard needs to have their spell book to do things, but they can get more spells quicker. So there's a variety of different elements here. But this is the difference between features and traits. Now, one other thing I want to call out that will appear here, and you're not going to see any at this time, is feats. So as you go up through levels, at level 4, I would be given the choice. I could either take a +1 to an ability score or I can take a feat. And the cool part about this is feats give you special abilities. So I can get feats that give me additional features and traits that I can leverage to my benefit or the benefit of the party. So it's important to know this so that you can track these things as they go. But right now, as I said, I don't have any feats. But let's take a look at feats you could get, for example. Like a favorite of mine for spellcasters is Warcaster. Notice here, if I take this feat, it says that I've practiced casting spells in the midst of combat and learned benefits. I have advantage on any Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell where I took damage. So this is a mechanic of spellcasting. If you're a spellcaster, and let's say I've cast something like Entangle or something that requires me to maintain concentration. Number 1, I can only cast one of those at a time because you can't concentrate on more than one spell. But if I get hit, I have to turn around and say, okay, roll a Constitution check to see if I can maintain concentration. This is saying I get advantage on that because I'm used to casting spells in this sort of craziness. I can perform the semantic components of the spell even with when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands. So some spells have a semantic component which requires me to use my hands. And what they're saying is as a warcaster, I can still do that using a weapon in my hand. A wizard that doesn't have Warcaster would have to be empty-handed to do that. When a hostile creature's movement provokes an attack of opportunity, you can use your reaction to cast a spell at that creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. So for example, if somebody comes by me, I can turn around and cast Firebolt on them. So this is another option to make the character more easy and better to work with. So that's the video I wanted to talk about with regard to features and traits. Thank you so much. Hope you found this helpful and hope die rolls are in your favor.